Monday, July the 11th, you should be reading 1 Kings chapter 12. You should also be reading 2 Chronicles 10 and 11, as well as Titus chapter 1. Last week, we wrapped up some series with me and Adam going through the book of Ecclesiastes, talking about how there's nothing else that matters in all the world except for serving God and keeping His commandments. That's it. Nothing else matters in this life except for living for God. And I hope you had a good time, a challenging time reading through the book of Ecclesiastes. Like we talked about, it kind of gets depressing, but the whole point is to point out when you run towards things that aren't Jesus, they always leave you empty. And Solomon understood that from his life. And his life lesson to us is no matter how many riches you acquire, no matter how many things you gain in this life, if you don't gain Jesus, you gain nothing. And I hope that you were challenged and equipped to walk with Jesus better and to dive deeper into His Word. Today, we pick up in 1 Kings chapter 12. Solomon just died. He's no longer king. His son Rehoboam has become king. And God told Solomon that because of his arrogance, because of the sins of himself, and because of the sins of his family, that the kingdom was going to split. It was no longer going to be one kingdom, it would be two kingdoms. You have Israel in the north and Judah in the south. And this happens under the reign of Rehoboam. The people reject him as king and they split. The nation goes into civil war, 10 tribes to the north and 2 to the south. And they have redefining lines and they elect a guy named Jeroboam as their king. Jeroboam becomes king. He sets up shop for his kingdom in a town called Shechem. It's no longer in Jerusalem. And he recognizes that, you know what, we still worship the same God. And that's a problem to him. Because if we're going to worship the same God, then we got to go to Jerusalem to worship. We got to go to Jerusalem to offer sacrifices. And if the people go there, they might turn on me. They might forget that I'm their king, and that they may rejoin Rehoboam because they want to stay a part of that kingdom. So instead, what he does is he fortifies the cities of Shechem, and he builds a temple there, and he seeks advice of his friends, and they say, let's build other gods for our people to worship. So he makes 2 golden calves, not to be outdone from the Old Testament. If you remember when we were in the book of Exodus, and Moses went up on the mountain and Aaron was in charge of the people for 40 days. They came back down, there was a golden calf. Instead of having 1 golden calf, he did 2 out of gold. He said, look, Israel, here's the gods who delivered you out of Egypt. This is a terrible place for God's people to be. They're in a terrible bind, and we're going to watch this unfold over the next several weeks together. As we finish up 1 Kings and we go into 2 Kings, you are going to see the nation unravel. Because they stop trusting that God is who He says He is and He's going to do what He says He's going to do. And they start fearfully turning into themselves and they look for hope from within themselves and they worship false gods. And it says king after king after king after king. After this point, we're just evil and evil. And then not to be outdone, not to be outbettered by the one before them, what would happen is each king would say, that king did this and it wasn't as evil as it could have been. It wasn't as cool as it could have been. I'm going to do it even more so because I want to make a name for myself. It became such a wicked place that God would send people like Elijah and Elisha, the prophets, to talk to these kings and talk to them to turn from their evil ways. They wouldn't do it. It's going to be a series of events as we read through them over the next few weeks. They're going to leave you go, why did they choose this path? Why? It was all starting with the fact that they chose sin over honoring God. It all started with this idea that they chose to put their trust in a king over their trust in the king over all the world. And you know what, church? We can be in the same boat if we're not careful. We can get stuck in the same kind of cycles. They're here for us to learn lessons from. That if we're not careful, we too can put our trust in things around us. We can put a trust in our gold we acquire, our money we acquire, our jobs, our families, our government, whatever. We put our trust in those things over our trust in God. We too will unravel. We have to firmly stand on the promises of God. We have to firmly hold on tight to Him, reminding ourselves that He's our King. He gets our trust. And we need to follow Him no matter what. Be on the lookout through the book of 1st and 2nd Kings as we wrap up these kings after kings after kings. Look for trends that are similarities in how they chose to live their life. And let's learn from them. Let's be a wise people that learn from their mistakes of these people so we don't make the same mistakes and we can choose to walk faithfully with God. Church, until we see you again tomorrow, you are sent.